The highway stretched ahead, familiar landmarks passing by like old friends, the grain silo, the cottonwood bend. After 6 months in Colorado hospital rooms watching my mother fade away, I was finally coming home to the ranch. She'd passed 3 weeks ago. The funeral was small. The grief was not. I needed to see my land again, to remember what solid ground felt like. Then I saw it, a glint of light where there shouldn't be one, sunlight reflecting off water. My chest tightened as I slowed the truck. What I was seeing didn't make sense. There was a pond sitting right there in the front section of my property. A full-size decorative pond with stone edging, a humming filtration system, and decorative benches positioned like some park installation. It covered nearly a third of the area in front of my house. Someone had turned my ranch into a suburban showpiece. I got out slowly, boots sinking into soft earth as I walked toward it. The air smelled of disturbed dirt and fresh mulch. I crouched down, ran my fingers along the stone border. Professional work. Expensive work. Someone had spent serious money on this without my knowledge or permission. Then I noticed something else. The fence line looked wrong. The posts that marked my property boundary, the ones I'd set myself years ago, were gone, replaced by new ones set back several feet. Someone had moved my fence. Mr. Wade. I turned. A woman stood there, mid-50s, dressed in business casual, holding a tablet. She had that look I'd seen 1,000 times in my career as an insurance investigator. The look of someone who believed they were absolutely, unquestionably in the right. "I'm Daphne Caldwell, HOA president. I wasn't sure when you'd be back." Her tone was polite but had an edge to it, an expectation that I'd simply accept whatever she was about to tell me. I waited. Everything was done according to proper procedures. We held a community meeting, voted on the amenity enhancement project, got all the necessary permits. "I didn't authorize this," I said flatly. Her smile tightened. "The paperwork says otherwise. We have your signature on the consent form." Daphne tapped her tablet screen and turned it toward me. A scanned document showed a permit application with a signature at the bottom that was supposed to be mine. I leaned in and studied it. The letters were close, similar in general shape, but it wasn't my signature. I'd signed thousands of documents in my 20-year career investigating insurance fraud. I knew my own signature down to the pressure points and angle variations. This wasn't it. "When was this signed?" I asked. "March 15th. I nodded slowly. March 15th. I was in Colorado at my mother's bedside. She'd had a bad turn that week. I barely left the hospital. "I was out of state," I said. "I didn't sign this." Daphne's expression shifted, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. "The signature is on file with the county, Mr. Wade. If you have concerns, you're welcome to attend the next HOA meeting, but the project is complete. The pond is community property now." I looked past her at the pond. Everything about this screamed wrong. The signature that wasn't mine. The fence posts that had been moved. The timeline that put me 3 states away when I supposedly gave consent. "I'll need copies of all the documents," I said. "The permit, the meeting minutes, the notification records." She stiffened. "Those are available through proper channels." "Then I'll use proper channels." Something in my tone must have registered because her smile vanished completely. "Mr. Wade, I understand you've been through a difficult time, but this project benefits the entire community. Fighting it would be a waste of everyone's resources, including yours." There it was, the subtle threat, the implication that I should back down and not cause problems. But I'd spent years dissecting fraud, learning to spot inconsistencies, following paper trails, and building cases that stood up to scrutiny. Everything about this situation fit the pattern. "I'll be in touch," I said, and walked past her toward my house. 20 minutes later, I sat in my neighbor Estelle Brennan's kitchen, a cup of coffee cooling in front of me. She'd lived 3 properties down for over 20 years. They started construction in April, Estelle said, her hands wrapped around her mug. Big trucks, excavators, the whole operation. I thought it was strange they were working on your land when you weren't here, but Daphne came by personally, told me you'd approved it before you left. I never approved anything, I said. Estelle nodded. I figured you would have mentioned it, but Daphne had paperwork. She showed it to a few of us, said everything was legal and proper. Did you question it? I questioned it, but I didn't know how to reach you. And honestly, Sullivan, Daphne's not someone you cross lightly. She's got connections. The construction company that did the work, her brother-in-law owns it. I filed that information away. A family connection to the contractor. Classic conflict of interest. She pushed this project through fast, Estelle continued. Called an emergency meeting when half the homeowners were out of town, including you, including the Petersons 2 streets over, including the Clarks. When was the meeting? Late February. I was there. Daphne presented it as urgent, said we needed to approve the amenity improvement immediately or we'd lose the contractor's availability. The vote passed, but barely. Multiple absent owners, emergency meeting, fast-tracked approval, all classic signs of a railroaded decision. If I pursue this, I said carefully, if I challenge the legality of what they did, would you be willing to confirm what you just told me? She didn't hesitate. Yes, what they did wasn't right, Sullivan. A lot of us felt it, but nobody wanted to stand up to Daphne. Back home, I spread my property documents across the desk. Deed, survey maps, title insurance, HOA correspondence. I opened a fresh spreadsheet and started building a timeline, something I'd done hundreds of times for insurance cases. The gaps were obvious, too many gaps. Then I made a call. Marcus Callahan's office was downtown in one of those renovated brick buildings with high ceilings and character. We'd worked together on a property insurance fraud case a decade ago. He was thorough, meticulous, exactly what I needed. I slid the folder from the county record's office across his desk. I need your opinion on this. Marcus opened it and started reading. His eyes narrowed slightly when he reached the consent form. He pulled out his phone and took a photo of the signature, then looked up at me. This isn't your signature. No, it's not. He leaned back in his chair. Tell me everything. So I did, 6 months away, coming home to the pond, Daphne's confidence that everything was legal, the timeline that put me out of state when I supposedly signed, the wrong email address on the permit, the fence posts that had been moved. Marcus listened without interrupting, making occasional notes. When I finished, he said, if we can prove the signature is forged, the entire permit is invalid. Everything built under that permit becomes an illegal structure on your property. How do we prove it? I know a forensic document examiner, Dr. Rowan Fletcher. He's testified in court more times than I can count. If anyone can confirm this is a forgery, it's him. 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Fletcher's lab while he examined my signatures under magnifying glasses with built-in lights. He moved between my genuine signatures and the question one, comparing angles, measuring loops, studying pressure marks. Finally, he straightened and looked at Marcus. This is a forgery, no question. The person who created this had a sample of your signature to work from, but they didn't understand the biomechanics. Your genuine signatures show consistent right-to-left slant and natural flow. This one is too upright, too uniform in pressure. It has hesitation marks where the forger paused to check their work. Can you quantify that in a report? Marcus asked. Already working on it. I'll have a preliminary analysis by tomorrow, full expert report within a week. We also hired a surveyor. She came out with GPS units and laser measuring tools, spending hours walking my property line. When she finished, she showed me the results on her tablet. The pond is entirely within your property boundaries. According to your deed and the county's original survey, there's no question. This structure has no right to be here. The pieces were coming together: forged signature, improper notification, boundary discrepancies. Each one alone might be explainable. Together they formed a pattern. And patterns were evidence. The HOA emergency meeting room was packed by the time I arrived with Marcus. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls. Enough homeowners had demanded answers that Daphne couldn't ignore it anymore. She sat at the front table, her expression controlled but her posture rigid. When the meeting was called to order, she spoke first. "I want to address the recent legal action taken by Mr. Wade. The board stands by every decision made regarding the amenity project. All procedures were followed. Any allegations to the contrary are unfounded and, frankly, a waste of community resources." Marcus leaned over and whispered, "Your turn." I stood, the room went quiet. "I'd like to present some facts," I said. I connected my laptop to the projector. The first slide appeared on the screen behind Daphne, a side-by-side comparison: my genuine signature on the left, the forged signature from the permit on the right. "This is my signature from my property deed," I said, pointing to the left image. "And this is the signature on the permit application. They're not the same. A forensic document examiner confirmed it. The signature on the permit is a forgery." The room erupted in murmurs. Daphne's face went pale. I advanced to the next slide. The email notification with the bounce-back message highlighted. "This is the notification the HOA claims they sent me about the February meeting. It bounced back as undeliverable on February 19th. There's no record of them attempting to resend it to the correct address." More murmurs, people leaning forward in their seats. Next slide, the certified mail receipt dated March 2nd. "This receipt is supposed to prove they mailed me physical notification, but the meeting was on February 26th. They backdated the documentation." Daphne stood abruptly. "This is taking things out of context. We followed notification protocol." I looked at her directly. "The email address you used isn't mine. It never was. My actual email is in my original HOA registration file. You've been using a wrong address, and you used that same wrong address on the forged permit application." The room went silent. One of the other board members spoke up. "Daphne, is that true?" The meeting dissolved into chaos after that. People demanding answers. Board members distancing themselves from Daphne. Calls for her resignation. When it finally adjourned, she left quickly, not making eye contact with anyone. Outside, Estelle caught up with me. "That was necessary. Thank you for having the courage to do it." "It's not over," I said. "No," she agreed, "but it's close." Courthouse was the old kind, built when civic buildings were meant to inspire respect for the law. High ceilings, wood paneling, everything designed to remind you that what happened here mattered. The HOA had brought in new lawyers, specialists in damage control. That told me they knew they were in trouble. The judge entered, reviewed the file, then looked up. "This is a preliminary hearing regarding alleged trespass, fraud, and property rights violations. Let's hear from the plaintiff." Marcus walked to the podium and laid out our case with surgical precision. The forged signature, the forensic analysis, the timeline proving I was out of state when I supposedly gave consent, the notification failures, the survey showing the pond entirely on private property. Each point backed by exhibits, by expert reports, by documentation that couldn't be waved away. The forensic examiner testified first, explaining the technical analysis of the signature. Under cross-examination, the HOA's lawyer tried to suggest it was just one expert's opinion. "I've testified in over 200 cases," Dr. Fletcher said calmly. "I've examined thousands of questioned documents. This signature is not genuine. The evidence is conclusive." The surveyor testified next, walking through the GPS data and boundary measurements. There is no ambiguity. The structure is entirely on private property. The fence posts were moved after the original survey, but the legal boundary hasn't changed. Then I took the stand. I walked through my timeline, the airline tickets showing my departure date, the hospital records from Colorado, the documentation proving I couldn't have been present to sign anything in mid-March. The HOA's lawyer tried to shake me during cross-examination. Isn't it possible you signed the form before you left and simply forgot? No, I said. I have no memory of it because it never happened, and the forensic evidence confirms that. But you were under significant stress, caring for a dying parent. Perhaps your memory is imperfect. I looked at him directly. I spent 20 years as an insurance investigator. Documentation and timelines are what I do. I didn't sign that form. I wasn't in the state when it was supposedly signed, and the signature itself proves it's a forgery. The judge interrupted. Counsel, the forensic evidence is compelling. Do you have any expert testimony to contradict it? The HOA lawyer hesitated. We believe the county's acceptance of the permit speaks to its validity. The county accepted a document with a forged signature, the judge said. That doesn't make the forgery legitimate. He didn't have anything else. The judge sat back, made some notes, then looked at both legal teams. I'm prepared to rule. The evidence shows that the permit was obtained through fraudulent means. The signature is forged. The notification process was inadequate. The property boundaries are clear. The structure sits on private land without valid owner consent. She paused, and the courtroom was absolutely silent. I'm issuing a permanent injunction. The HOA is ordered to cease all use of the structure immediately. Within 60 days, the HOA will remove the structure and restore the property to its original condition. The HOA is liable for all costs associated with removal, restoration, and the plaintiff's legal fees. The gavel came down. Daphne's face went white. The HOA lawyer started to speak, then stopped. There was nothing to say. The evidence had been too strong, the violations too clear. Outside the courtroom, Marcus shook my hand. Clean victory, decisive. A reporter from the local paper approached, asked for a comment. The legal system works when you have evidence and patience, I said. This was never about the pond. It was about property rights and proper procedure. I'm satisfied with the outcome. Estelle was waiting by her car. Justice, she said simply. I nodded. Not revenge. Not personal satisfaction. Just the natural consequence of breaking the law and thinking nobody would notice. Just the system working the way it was supposed to when you did the work to make it work. The contractors arrived 3 weeks later. Not the same company that had built the pond. That one had quietly settled with the HOA and disappeared. These were professionals hired specifically for demolition and restoration. I watched from my porch as they unloaded equipment, excavators, dump trucks, pumps to drain the water. The foreman showed me the work plan. We'll have the pond drained by end of day. Then we start breaking up the stone and removing the liner. Should take about 2 weeks for full demolition. Another week to fill, grade, and reseed. By sunset, the pond was empty. Just a concrete shell with decorative stone that had no business being there. But it wouldn't be there for long. The demolition took exactly as long as the foreman predicted. Stone by stone, the decorative border came out. The filtration system was dismantled. The concrete liner was broken up and hauled away in dump trucks. I watched the progress each day, documented it with photos. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted the record. I wanted to remember what it looked like when something built on fraud was torn down and the land was given back its integrity. The HOA had paid for everything. The removal, the restoration, my legal fees, the surveyor's fees, the forensic examiner's fees, every cost associated with fixing what they'd broken. The total ran into 6 figures. It was a significant hit to their reserves, one that would affect their budget for years. But that was the consequence. That was what happened when you cut corners and forged signatures and assumed nobody would have the knowledge or resources to fight back. Daphne Caldwell had resigned 2 days after the court ruling. Didn't make a statement, didn't try to save face, just submitted a one-line resignation letter and disappeared from community events. I heard through Estelle that she was planning to move. I didn't take pleasure in that. She'd made choices, and those choices had consequences. That was the extent of it. The other board members who'd enabled her faced their own reckoning. 2 of them resigned. The remaining board committed to transparency reforms, brought in outside auditors, rewrote the bylaws to require stricter notification and verification procedures. The new board president reached out to me personally, apologized for what had happened, asked if I'd be willing to serve on an advisory committee. I declined politely. I've done my part. The systems you're putting in place are good ones. You don't need me to maintain them, you just need to actually follow them. By the 4th week, the land was filled in. The contractors brought in topsoil that matched my property, graded it carefully, and laid down grass seed. They reinstalled the fence posts exactly where the surveyor had marked the original property line. When they were finished, you could still see where the work had been done. The grass was newer, greener, but give it a season and it would blend. Give it a year and you'd never know there had been a pond there at all. I stood alone on my land looking at the space that had been returned to me. It felt different now, not violated, not claimed by people who had no right, just mine again, the way it should have been all along. The truth matters, documentation matters, procedure matters, not because they're bureaucratic obstacles, but because they're protections, safeguards against people who think authority and confidence are enough. The system works only when you push it to. When you gather evidence, follow procedure, and build cases that can't be ignored or waved away. A truck pulled into the driveway, a new family moving into the house 3 properties down. The husband got out and waved. We talked for a few minutes about the neighborhood. He mentioned he'd heard about the HOA situation and asked if it was resolved. It is, I said. They're under new management now, better policies, more accountability. He looked relieved. Good to know. Just remember, I said, document everything, know your rights. Don't assume people in authority are always acting in good faith. He nodded, headed back to his truck. I walked back to my porch and sat down in the chair I'd sat in 1,000 times before. The ranch was mine again. The violation erased. The systems that had failed finally corrected. The new grass caught the evening light still settling, but eventually it would blend. The scar would fade, leaving only the lesson that rights, procedure, and truth, properly documented, still matter. The ranch was mine again, and that was enough.